In East Idaho, the Idaho National Laboratory is hugely important to the economy, the culture, and the quality of life. The director of the INL, Dr. Mark Peters, sat down with us to lay out his vision for the future.
And now joining us here at Idaho Reports is Director of the Idaho National Lab, newly appointed last October, Dr. Mark Peters. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
You know, a lot of people, you've been on the job since October 1st. I think a lot of people are still getting to know who you are, and that's kind of what we wanted to start off with was, who are you, where you come from, and what interested you in the Idaho National Laboratory and Idaho?
Well, I'm a geologist by training, so that actually attracts me to the state of Idaho because it's great geology. But I've been in the National Laboratory system for most of my career, so I worked at Los Alamos National Laboratory for 5 years, and then moved to Argonne National Laboratory in the Chicago area for 11 years. And did a lot of collaborative work. I worked in the nuclear energy research and development area, and I did a lot of collaborative work with Idaho National Laboratory. And when the opportunity presented itself to come lead this laboratory, I jumped at it. It's a great laboratory. Great people, great facilities, and a great foundation to do great science going forward.
Now, you took over at a pretty contentious time at INL, where there was a lot of controversy over whether INL, and the state of Idaho really, should accept spent nuclear fuel rods for research and development. Have you, in the short time you've been here, been able to sit down with the key players in the BAT agreement, the Attorney General, the former governors, the governor himself, and how have those conversations been?
Yeah, so I immediately started to build relationships with all of those. So I have met with Governor Andrus and Governor Batt. I've met with Governor Otter, Attorney General Wasden, as well as Lieutenant Governor Miller. And I've met with all of them, and I took a broad view and said I want to build relationships that are focused on the future. And so I've done that during the first 4 months. In fact, I'm here in Boise, and I'm going to be doing another set of meetings with some of those folks this week. And again, I wanted to take the long view, build trust, have them understand what the Idaho National Laboratory does and value what they do. By the time I arrived in October, the decision on the first shipment of material to come in to do research had really basically been, the die had been cast by that point. And so I took the long view. So we're in the process. There's conversations going on between the Department of Energy and the state right now on accepting research quantities for the second shipment. And those conversations are happening. And so I'm positive in the sense that they're talking and they're in the process of negotiating.
What's the timeline on that? You mentioned that they're ongoing. I know that they were thinking January, February is when they wanted to start accepting some of that second shipment. Are we going to have that happen here in Idaho, or do you feel confident in that?
I'm still optimistic. There's more conversations that have to be had, but we really are. In March, is the next decision point. There needs to be a decision made, or there needs to be an agreement between the Department of Energy and the state that we can take that next shipment in March, or else that will impact the project that is already ongoing. It would impact it in a significant way.
Are those conversations as contentious the second time around as they were last summer?
I would characterize them as not contentious. What I'm liking about it is they're constructive. And what I appreciate about what the Attorney General is saying is that he has two responsibilities. He has to protect the environment and meet the terms of the settlement agreement and protect the environment, which I fully agree with, and the laboratory does. But he also has responsibility to be, let's call it, a steward of Idaho National Laboratory as the lead nuclear energy lab. So he recognizes he's got both of those responsibilities, and he's doing his best to balance it. So I respect his positions. From my perspective, I just want to make sure he has all the information that he needs to make a decision. And so I control the lab part of that.
That was tied to the understanding that the integrated waste treatment unit was up and running. It doesn't sound like we'll have that up in the next 4 or 5 months, which is well outside of when you'd hope to have that next shipment, which would be sometime in the next month or so. Is that still going to play a major part, or is there other things that are on the table that can be utilized that would make the Attorney General and the governor feel better about bringing those spent nuclear rods here to Idaho?
The components that are being discussed again, this is a Department of Energy state discussion. The lab is not a part of the negotiation. But there's really two components to it. It is the integrated waste treatment unit and treating those 900,000 gallons of sodium waste, liquid waste. That's an important consideration. So they're having to have conversations about, okay, when do we think they're going to have it up and running? And they're in the midst of those conversations. The other component is as you know, the waste isolation pilot plant in New Mexico has been shut down. And so we've been treating we've been treating transuranic waste at the site, and it's piling up, waiting for WIP to reopen. So that's also part of the conversation as well. And those are all dates that were agreed upon in the settlement agreement, in the 95 settlement agreement. So all of those things are part of the conversation. It's a complex set of conversations, but again, I'm very positive in the sense that they're talking, and it's constructive. And so I appreciate that very much.
Now, you mentioned a little bit the research that you want to do. What's on your radar when it comes to research and development?
Broadly for the whole laboratory, we are the nuclear energy laboratory for the nation. So we first and foremost, it's to help solve the nation's spent fuel problem. Right, we're talking about research quantities coming in to do research, but you've got 70,000 metric tons of material piled up at sites across the United States. And so what technologies can we use to best disposition that material? That's one. But I'm most excited about the future of nuclear energy and advanced reactors, because there's starting to be a recognition that in order to mitigate climate greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere and also provide energy security for the nation, you've got to enable a future for nuclear energy. So we have existing reactors that operate. How do we sustain those? But also building the next generation, small modular reactors, these small reactors that are really designed, an evolutionary design from what is being used to power aircraft carriers and submarines. Those are a bridge to a future that involves advanced reactors that are even safer and more secure than the current fleet. And we're in the middle. The laboratory is really the lead integrator for working with industry to enable that future. So that's very, very exciting.
In fact, it was mentioned in February that the permit to start doing some of the environmental research for those small modular reactors to be built at the Idaho National Lab was starting to take place. But that doesn't mean building or construction on that's happening this year.
That's correct. So there's two components. NuScale, the designer of the small modular reactor based out of Corvallis, Oregon, has to go and get what is called a design certification from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. That's an important step. And also the decision that you're referring to is UAMPS, Utah Associated Municipal Power Systems. It's a consortium of municipal utilities have agreed with the DOE. They've signed a use permit with the DOE to explore getting a license application to build their first-of-a-kind reactor on our site. But like you say, there's a lot. That's the first important step, but a long way to go. The earliest that you would have a commercial NuScale reactor operating on our site would be 2024. So there's a lot of decisions that have to be made between now and then.
The Snake River Alliance has been somewhat hesitant to endorse the small modular reactor issue. One of the reasons they state is just the output of a small modular reactor of like 45 megawatts versus one of the larger scales. If you could, I guess, react to that and why nuclear in a smaller scale is a better option than in what we are typically used to, which are these big plants.
The idea of the small modular reactors is as it's described. You construct them in a modular way. So once you develop the first of a kind and start to build second, third, fourth of a kind reactors, you can actually get them to where they're cost competitive and perhaps even more competitive than big machines. And it's the way you construct them. Mm-hmm. And also the designs are, while the existing reactor fleet is very safe, these new designs are actually as much as 2 orders of magnitude safer than the existing designs. So there's a benefit from an economic perspective potentially, and also from a safety perspective. I would also say that they build them typically in modules, meaning, one module is 45, but they'll build them in sets of 6 or 12. So what they're talking about building on our site is 12 units. So it would be about 600 megawatts electric. And the nice thing about these smaller reactors is that they fit more readily into the grid. And also you could think about how they integrate better with renewables as well. So there are actually a lot of benefits that people don't necessarily realize.
Now, it sounds like a lot of exciting stuff is happening at INL, but that, of course, is located in East Idaho. Now, we have viewers from all across the state, and I'm thinking about specifically our congressional delegation. Mike Simpson, the congressman who represents your area of the state, has supported INL consistently, whereas the other congressman, Raul Labrador, has voted against some INL funding and projects. And so, with that in mind, viewers in Sandpoint and elsewhere in the state who are watching, why should they be as excited about some of the economic development and how it's affecting East Idaho?
Well, I'll start by saying it's the laboratory's responsibility to do a better job of describing to the whole state what's the value of the laboratory, and that'll be a priority for us going forward, is to try to do a much better job of talking to the whole state about what we bring. I would say when you talk about clean energy research and development is really what we're doing. That translates into jobs, that translates into economic development, and it shouldn't just be for Eastern Idaho, it should really be for the whole state. We're working with all the state universities. Let's take Northern Idaho. We're partnered with University of Idaho, for example. We have a thing called the Center for Advanced Energy Studies, which was actually funded by the state of Idaho, and also members include the INL, University of Idaho, Idaho State University, and Boise State University, as well as the University of Wyoming. And we're working together to do research, but that translates into economic development, potentially creating markets for clean energy in the state and other benefits. And again, that shouldn't just be for Eastern Idaho, that should be a benefit for the whole state.
Are there other avenues that you could partner with some of these local universities, universities across the state rather, particularly in cybersecurity, because that's something that INL has had its hand in?
Absolutely. So there's a partnership. The governor actually announced in his budget address, partnership with Boise State University in cybersecurity, but that includes the other University of Idaho and Idaho State University as well. We were just visiting University of Idaho a couple weeks ago and had really great discussions about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a really large opportunity. It's a challenge for the nation and the world for that matter, and INL's uniquely qualified to be the laboratory that can really lead us forward in terms of the research that's needed to protect systems from cyber threats, and the universities
Why
provide
is that? I've heard that a lot. We're uniquely situated to do this kind of research. Why is the INL the best place to do it?
It's one important consideration is we have a large site that's west of Idaho Falls, and we have our own grid, and we're able to actually use that grid to test, and we can actually just like we did with reactors through our history, we can actually test things to failure, and so we can actually take our grid and actually attack it in different ways or do different testing, and actually understand things. And sometimes the best way to understand how a system will respond is to actually run it to failure. So that's one advantage. And we've also grown a significant capability in national security and the interface between cyber and nuclear. And so all those things have led to really just an incredible growth in our capability there. And when you look at the national laboratories, we're top in cybersecurity R&D.
Now, you've talked a lot about some of the exciting research, the things you're excited for, but you've also talked about how your workforce is getting older. You have a lot of people retiring. The Post-Register recently reported on longtime INL scientist Harold McFarland. And so, meanwhile, nationwide, enrollment rates in nuclear science programs are dropping. And so, looking long term, how concerned are you about not only attracting talent but retaining them so you can continue these exciting research projects?
It's a challenge for us, but I actually view it as an opportunity. A few statistics, numbers for you. So 30% of our workforce is over age 50. And we're also growing on top of that. So we hired 500 people last year, and we're hiring that probably more this year. So you've got this interesting challenge where you've got a demographic where your workforce is aging, and on top of that you're growing. So we have challenges with attracting people, retaining them, keeping them excited. Let's take cyber, for example. We bring somebody in to work on cybersecurity. They're very attractive to go off and work somewhere else. Those are very highly sought after positions. So we have to do a better job of actually, once we get people, keeping them excited and keeping them at the laboratory. We pay very well, right. $87,000, $88,000 average salary. So it's a good pay scale. And I think once people get to Idaho, they realize what a great place to live, but you got to get them here.
How many, you talk about bringing people to Idaho, but how many Idaho kids are you hiring? How many BSU grads and ISU grads and UI grads do you see come and stay at INL?
No, not enough.
Why is
there
that?
are some, not enough. I think it's because partly I would put it on us. We need to do a better job of exciting them and showing them what we do. And also, and we're partnering with the universities on this. We're being very strategic about it. So working with ISU, University of Idaho, and Boise State in particular, BYU Idaho as well, to name a few, to actually say, okay, here's our future workforce needs, and actually working with them, and they could even adjust their curriculums to some extent to actually help meet the workforce needs of the future, and they're willing to have that conversation, but also bring interns in. We have 350 interns last year, and we expect more this year. So if you bring them into the laboratory and expose them to the work, that's creating that pipeline. But it's an interesting challenge. But to me, it's exciting because 5 years from now, imagine it's a brand new lab. You know, we're taking advantage of our existing staff and value them and retain them, and we're bringing in all these fresh young faces that are doing this great innovation. So it's, to me, I wouldn't characterize it as a concern, more of a challenge and an opportunity.
This program is watched by a lot of lawmakers and by educators. Are our universities prepared to educate the kids, the same ones that you can hire, or do we have some work to do as a state to prepare our universities to get these kids to be at the level where they could be hired by the INL?
We have work to do as a state, but when I talk to the university presidents and what I saw what the governor rolled out in terms of his education agenda, we're heading in the right direction. I'm really positive about that. And it's a partnership. The laboratory has to work in partnership on STEM efforts and all the efforts that go into that. But I'm very pleased by the decisions that are being made by policymakers in the universities about heading in the right direction.
Do the STEM proposals go far enough in your view?
They're an important first step. I think we need to get those moving, and then I'm sure we're going to find opportunities to do more. But again, I can't. I'm just very pleased that we're doing something. These are some big proposals, and we're excited. We're an important part. When the STEM Action Center moves forward, we hope it does. We'll be an important part of that. I'll personally be involved in that as well.
You were appointed to the board of STEM. You're also the leader of the INL. I mean, let's take it down the road a little bit. Ultimately, how would you like to see us be in 5 years from now?
I'd like us to be viewed as having solved big scientific, technical challenges. I think we've spent the first 10 years of INL building great facilities and doing great work, but I think we have the opportunity to answer big national questions around nuclear, around cyber. And so 5 years from now, I want to look back and say, wow, they actually really had a major impact on the nation's energy system. And by the way, what will come with that is more hiring and more funding. But it's first leading with the scientific impact, and the rest will come.
Well, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you.